In this video, we'll be upgrading an existing 3.4.380.70 64-bit Pi server to Pi Server 2015. In previous videos, we planned out our upgrade by reviewing the live library documentation, deciding on our architecture, and downloading the relevant files such as install kits and documentation from the TechSport website. We also performed health checks on our Pi data archive and all of our Pi interface nodes, as some of these installations require reboots. Nick showed us how to install SQL Server 2012 Express to support the AF server following our white paper. Now that those have all been completed, we can proceed with the Pi server upgrade by first installing AF Server 2015. So let's go to the live library documentation for installing AF server. Go to Installation and Pi Asset Framework Installation and Upgrade, AF Server Installation, and we are installing the AF Server components on a single machine. So let's go over the Before You Start checklist. We have ensured that the computer that we are installing meets all the prerequisites in our planning video. We've also ensured that we've downloaded the AF Server 2015 install kit. We also have to make sure we have the SysAdmin privilege to install the PI AF SQL database. If you recall, in installing SQL Express video, we added the local administrators group to have SysAdmin privileges. So let's make sure my user is part of the administrators group. So we'll go to Server Manager, Configuration, Local Users and Groups, and in the administrators group, you can see that I am part of the administrators group, so I will have the correct privileges. So now we can proceed with running the AF install kit. So we'll navigate to our install kit, right-click, and run as administrator. Now we need to specify a path to extract our setup files, and I'll specify the same path as our install kits in case I need to access them later. So here we have our setup window, which tells us all of the modules that will need to be installed. And note that with Microsoft.NET Framework 4.5, which has not been installed on this node, it will require a reboot at the end of the installation setup. So we'll proceed with the .NET Framework 4.5 install. Okay, this installation has been completed, so we'll finish. And we'll move on to the AF Server 2015 installation. Click Next. And here we have all of our features selected by default. Since we have installed SQL and are installing AF on this same node, we are going to accept this default with all features selected. Here we will specify the logon information for the AF application service. When you install the Pi AF application service and the Pi AF SQL database on the same machine as here for our small Pi system, OSIsoft recommends the use of the default virtual account. If the Pi AF service and Pi AF SQL database are installed on separate machines, OSIsoft recommends you run the Pi AF application service under a domain service account. We will show this here just to demonstrate this use case. Remember, if you're installing all the components on the same machine, leave the default virtual account selected. Click Next. And if you recall in our SQL video, we kept the default name of SQL Express. So here our PI SVR/SQL Express is our default. and we will keep that and select Next. Now here we will verify that all of the features and configuration settings are correct and select Install. Okay, so the setup has completed, but again we have to reboot our machine because we've installed .NET Framework 4.5. So I'll go ahead and reboot now. And after rebooting, our installation is now complete. So now that AF Server 2015 is installed, we want to do a couple of checks to make sure that the right components are on the machine. So first we'll check the SQL Server database by going to SQL Server 2012 and SQL Server Management Studio. So after connecting, we'll expand databases. And here you can see we have our PIFD database installed. The next thing we want to check is the AF service. So we'll go to Services. And here we can see our PI AF application service is running. So now our AF server install is complete, and now we can move on to our PI data archive upgrade. So the first thing we'll need to do is isolate the PI data archive node from the network so that all of our PI interface nodes can buffer data while the upgrade and configuration is completed. There are a couple ways you can do this. If you have direct access to the machine, you can simply disconnect the network cable, or you can use the Windows Firewall or other firewall to block incoming connections. On our machine, we don't have access to the Windows Firewall, so we're going to use the third option, which is using the PI Firewall. So we'll go to PI System Management Tools, and go to Security Firewall and add a new firewall rule using the IP address of our PI interface nodes and selecting Disallow and hitting OK. Now this option, unlike the other options, will not take effect for 15 minutes or upon restarting the PI data archive. So the next step will be shutting down the PI data archive, knowing that upon restart, this new firewall rule will take effect. So we'll open a command prompt as administrator, navigate to the PI ADM directory, and running pisrvstop to stop our PI server. Now that our PI data archive is shut down, we will next want to go to our PI interface nodes and confirm buffering is working. Since we are disconnected from the PI data archive, the events are building up in queue, but we have a sufficient estimated buffer capacity. If you're using an older version of PI Buffer Subsystem that does not have Buffering Manager, you can check the buffering queue statistics in the command prompt as we did in the previous video. Again, make sure you check this on any additional PI interface machines. Back on our PI data archive, we can go ahead and run our install kit. So right-click the install kit and run as administrator. And use the same extraction location. And here we can see our setup with all of the modules that will be installed. So we'll click OK. We'll run through the pre-installation tasks. Okay, here we'll specify the name of our AF server. Since we have installed the AF server on the same machine, we're using the same machine name, PI SVR. So we'll click Next. And here we have our directories for our archives. Since we have an existing installation of PI Data Archive, the historical archives location has been grayed out. The future archives location can be configured, but I'm just going to leave it in the same drive as our historical archives and click Next. Okay, so it's letting us know that the PyPC log server will be stopped and restarted. So we'll click Next to stop those services and start the installation. Okay, and now it is going through all of the Pi services and starting them all up. Okay, all the services have started successfully, so we'll click Next, and our installation has completed. Now, there are some post-install tasks that we'll need to go through, so let's go to the live library documentation to see what those are. Under Installation, Pi Server Installation and Upgrade, we will scroll down to Post-Installation Tasks and Verify Data Archive Installation. So the first thing we'll have to do is verify that our Pi services are running. So we'll do that using PI SMT, run as administrator. And here we have a prompt asking if we want to participate in the Customer Experience Improvement Program. This is pretty helpful for us to collect data. So I'll select yes. Okay, and we'll go to Operation, Pi Services. And here we can see that most of our services are running except for PI Shutdown Subsystem, PI Batch Generator Interface, and PI Recalculator Subsystem. These aren't necessary for default running of our PI Data Archive, so these will be stopped. Next, we'll go to our message logs to make sure we don't have any errors. I'll just look for the last 20 minutes and search for errors. And we do have one error here from PI AF Link, unable to open AFMDB map table, cannot find the file specified. We get this error because the 2015 setup kit doesn't include these configuration files, so we need to run through the MDB to AF Link wizard and then verify we don't get this error after running the wizard. Next, we will check our snapshot and archive statistics. So here, similar to previously, we want to make sure our archived events and snapshot events sent to queue are equal. Looking in Live Library, next we want to make sure our data is updating for our default PI points. So we'll go to Data, Current Values, and search for some default tags, what point source are. We'll select those and click OK, and we can see we have current values. Okay, next we will want to verify our PI Data Archive licensing. So we will do that under Operation Licensing. And if we expand General and Usage, there are a couple things we want to check. We want to make sure the expiration time is never, and that the current percent match is 100%. If after you perform the upgrade, your current percent match is less than 100, you can generate a new license file on our tech support website. Next, we'll go to Archives, and we want to make sure that we have 2 spare empty archives. I can see here that I have my 2 empty archives, and if you don't have 2 empty archives, you can create those here. Next, we want to make sure that our time zone information is correct. So I'll go back to my command prompt window, and in the PI directory, type pidiag -tz. And here you can see I have my time zone information with all of the correct daylight savings rules. If your time zone information does not look like this, then you can go to our tech support website and download our time zone files and apply them to your PI data archive. Next, we'll want to check our AF server installation. So we'll go to Programs, PI System Explorer, and we'll want to create a new database and element. So we'll restart with elevated credentials, and we'll create a new user database. We'll call it test. And now that we've connected to the test database, we will create a new element. Also called test. And we will check in our changes. Select checked in. And once that is completed, we know that our AF server installation is successful. We will want to perform our MDB to AF synchronization configuration. This is important because it allows our PI data archive module database and AF to be synchronized. This will also correct our PI point count for PI notifications. So we will go to AF Link, and here we can see we have a red status of wizard not run. So we will select the wizard button here, select next. We have our PI SVR data archive, and we will analyze it. We see we have one security issue to be resolved, so we'll click next to see what that is. So for the synchronization, we need all PI identities to be mapped to a Windows account. So we will select our PI admin's identity and create a new mapping. And we will use our local administrators group as our Windows account to map to. So we will click the ellipses, change our location to our PI SVR machine, click OK, and type in administrators. And hit enter, and we have our administrator's account here, and we will create that mapping. Then we'll click next, and here we'll specify our AF database and element. So we'll connect to our AF server. So here it is choosing our test database, but I want to create a new database. So I'll click the ellipses and select New Database and call it MDB to AF Sync. Click OK, select that database and click OK, and we have our element default name. If you click Configure Group, you can see that through this synchronization, it'll create a new local Windows group, AF Link SVR, which will have the correct security settings on our AF server. So we'll click OK to keep that default configuration and click Next. We get a prompt that our element doesn't exist, so we will create that now. And it will continue with the synchronization. So now we have the synchronization configuration set up, and the prompt tells us to start the PI Link Subsystem. However, if you recall, we checked that all of our PI services are running, including AF Link. So we will need to restart that subsystem to apply these configuration changes. So we'll click Finish, go to our services, and restart PI AF Link Subsystem. So once we do that and we refresh, we see that our sync is in progress. And now our module database is in sync. Next, if you would like, you can change the drive location for archive and event queues. On our installation, you can see we have already established drives for our archives and queues and backups, which already contain those files. So if you would like to change the location of your archives or event queues, you can do that by going to Tuning Parameters. And please see our documentation on more information on changing those locations. Now that we have gone through all of the post-installation tasks covered in the live library, we can go ahead and reconnect the PI data archive to the network. So we'll go back to PI SMT and go back to Security, Firewall, select our PI interface node rules, and delete them. Now, if you're using Windows Firewall or a network cable, your interface nodes should reconnect with your PI data archive immediately and flush out their buffer queues. However, these PI Firewall changes won't take effect for 15 minutes or until I restart the PI server. So if I go to my interface node, you can see that it's still not connected to the server. So going back to the data archive, I'm going to go ahead and restart that. So back in the command prompt in PI ADM directory, I'll run pisrvstop. And then once that is complete, we will run pisrvstart. And if we go to our interface node, we can see that our buffering status is green and we have 0 events in queue. So next, we will want to check our PI interface points to make sure that they have current values. So we'll go back to current values and search for those PI points. Okay, and you can see that they have current values and they are updating. Finally, we will want to make sure, now that we have an upgraded PI server that is configured, we will want to take another backup of this machine. So we'll go to Backups and take Backup. Again, we will only select the primary archive. And for our backup location, I will select my backups drive and make a new folder, post upgrade backup. Select OK and select backup. It is also important to configure a scheduled backup task of our PI data archive at this time. This is covered in our YouTube playlist called Setup Backups for the PI Data Archive. And now we can see that our on-demand backup has completed successfully. And with that, we are finished with our upgrade to PI Server 2015.